Hello everyone, and welcome to this audio podcast. This audio podcast is part of a radio edition. This audio podcast in around looking at an overview of another art book, another art book that's another art book in production in around electronic patient records and healthcare perceptive, and the art book is for allied health professionals, for frontline health professionals, for multidisciplinary teams, healthcare service users, healthcare service providers, long-term healthcare disease sufferers, and for those amongst in the public domain. And the art book, this art book looks at using art linked to important elements of healthcare between healthcare sectors, from a scientist perspective, and to raise understanding of health and disease through art, joined up healthcare and electronic patient records, or EPRs, and also where the main crux, or the main basis of this particular art book, is in around using art to reflect healthcare, and to highlight aspects in around preventing disparities, and raising inequalities, and raising equality. The contents of this particular art book is has a synopsis. There's a synopsis in as part of this art book. There's a bit of intro, a bit of a basis in around electronic patient records, in context of how service users sort of how service healthcare service users as how healthcare service users sort of utilize electronic patient records, and the art book has a basis in around where a certain polls have been a certain poll had been carried out, asking specific questions, and this art book sort of delves into this particular it delves into looking at this poll, looking at electronic patient records, healthcare service users, and healthcare service users, electronic patient records, and by utilizing by utilizing art in asking particular and specific questions in around health in around electronic patient records, and linking and again sort of linking the art aspect, linking art. And so the particular questions look at, for example, and again, the basis of electronic patient records, or EPRs. Would you would you would healthcare service users want access to would healthcare service users want access to healthcare records, and where this particular question is from is answered through particular where this a question, where the question is answered in aligned to particular poll data. And then there's some analysis, and there's another question in around access to healthcare scientists, in context of primary care, in context of primary care, And there's a word cloud. There's a word cloud analyses, two different forms of sort of word cloud analyses as part of this art book. And there's and there's and then there's uh, uh, then there's a as part of this art book, there's a basis in around works by in around works by collaborators in around the renal patient support group, the RPSG, and the kidney disease and renal support group, get KDARS for kids. And the main sort of methodology in around this works, part of this artworks art this art book, in around this art book, was where the different polls, the different polls were designed to retrieve some basic data really, on whether healthcare service users would like to have access to records, healthcare records online. And this poll was actually carried out sort of retrospectively in 2012. And the poll sort of options were basically yes, no, maybe, and also where an online system that works in association with electronic patient records, EPRs, and then EPRs is enough. And another poll question was just to have, for example, it's just better to have, for example, doctors in control. And the analyses around this that rolling out sort of a poll of rolling out a poll offered opportunity the opportunity for service users, healthcare service users, to also put forward any comments regarding EPRs. And some of the comments have been captured and factored into this art book, into this art book works. And in this art book, there are some comments that have been factored in and anonymized, in this works. And towards the end of this art book, there is a summary page, which highlights that, for example, peer support alone does not override the necessity for educational support, and the learning style and health and digital literacy of service users, healthcare service users, and for example, also vary. And it is in this context that healthcare service users are more informed, or misinformation arises and impacts negatively on experience, and compromises quality of care, of healthcare. And then towards the latter parts of this art book, there's also sort of acknowledgements page, a sort of dedications page, and there is throughout this art book, as per the other art books, there throughout this art book, there's notes pages that can be used to where can be used where throughout this art book, there's notes pages where healthcare service users and service providers can sort of utilize to document aspects of healthcare, which then ultimately can be factored into electronic patient records throughout, as well as part of where service users, healthcare service users, for example, have for example, meetings or appointments, etc., and any sort of particular aspects from those appointments, for example, can be documented onto into this art book, and thus factored into electronic patient records as per used. This art book also has a general theme, and that is where the art book has a sort of again sort of a link with sort of research and analysis as well. So that draws this audio podcast to a close. This has been an audio podcast in around the radio edition. In around the radio edition, highlighting an overview in around art books. Another art book in production. This is an audio podcast as part of our research and analysis, and an audio podcast as part of the science assemblage, and a research audio podcast as part of another Storm Robotics production. And this art book, as per the other other art books, are part of a Storm Robotics collaborative. Thank you.